Hey, what is going on YouTube? Aaron here. We are back, ladies and gentlemen. And guys, we've got another fun one for you in today's video. We are in the Fubuki, the Tech Tree Tier 5 Japanese torpedo destroyer. And I told you guys I was going to be mixing it up. I had this replay saved, and I think it is an excellent choice and one to throw into the middle here of Japanese theme week. So I hope you guys enjoy. Here was our commander that we were running for this particular game, Mr. Razeo Tanaka here, a full concealment / torpedo build. As you can see, our inspirations there. I wouldn't recommend running full concealment. You don't necessarily need it, but that's, I know a lot of IJN mains like to run this way, so that's how we did it. Subsurface Venture, Look at Me Now, back in stock, and Smoke on the Water, as well as, of course, Unstoppable as our legendary trait. You could make the choice or the argument for Torpedo, Safari, and of course Perceptive. I always recommend Perceptive, but again, for this particular game, we were kind of just running a toxic torpedo concealment build, which is how most of the IJN Shima mains like to run their destroyers. But that's the build we had, and anyway, back to the game. Now, I'm going to be forthright with you guys. This is not the ultimate true toxic Shima IJN destroyer game that a lot of you guys are used to seeing when these ships pop up on your feed. However, I think this video is a perfect example of how influential destroyers, even non-gunboat destroyers, can be, and how to play destroyers to near perfection to help your team in order to win while still having some fun in the process. I see a lot of people's arguments like, oh, well, my team's going to fail anyway, so I might as well go behind them and get destroyers or torpedoes on target, rather. And I hate that mindset. Why? Because you're just leaving your team out to dry. So what are we doing in this situation? We are pushing in, trying to get the capture point, while also spotting for our team and paying attention to the ship lineups. And what do we mean by that, right? Well, there was an Andrea Doria here spotted, as well as a few other ships in the middle. There's 3 destroyers on the enemy team, and there is one of them. But guessing by the 2 other previous spotted ships, we can assume that there was already a destroyer there. So what did we do? We just simply edged the cap there, and we are contesting, or were contesting, this Hatsuharu. But guessing that he is going to be throwing some zoning torpedoes, we pushed out of that cap while allowing our zoning torpedoes on that Andrea to do their job. Now, something I want to note there is we did not shoot at the Hatsuharu. Why? Because we were out concealing him, and typically if you have teammates who have somewhat of an idea, they are going to take some shots at him. So anytime you can kind of allow that destroyer to be spotted for your team, battleships, cruisers, you should be shooting at him. Also, just a little side note, the only torpedo to actually get on target there was the one widespread we sent at the Heinrich. When you have a lot of torpedoes such as the Fubuki and the Japanese destroyers do, I always try to throw 1 or 2 narrow spreads for the predictor here, and then I go ahead and throw 1 widespread just in case. As you can see, the Helena is accelerating now, and those torpedoes aren't necessarily going to be on target. Now, in this instance, we know that there is a smoke screen there, and smoke screens are torpedo magnets, so we're just trying to blanket that smoke screen with a set of torpedoes there in hopes to hit that Hatsuharu. But now that we are sort of in a defensive position here, and these battleships have to push into a large crossfire in order to come get us, we're going to go ahead and smoke up and shoot here. However, we know that since we are not getting the resets on that Heinrich, that the Hatsuharu is, of course, back in the cap. Now, I know I mentioned not shooting in particular situations, but far too often you will see Japanese destroyers side by side another destroyer in an isolated engagement, trying to get their torpedoes on target rather than shoot their guns. And as we are showing you right now, even though the reload is pretty abysmal for the Fubuki and most of the Japanese destroyers, especially on the torpedo line, your guns will do a decent amount of damage, and here is a perfect example of that. We get the kill on the Heinrich there, and this Akatsuki decided to push in and engage us. So what are we going to do? We're going to kite away in this particular situation, trying to dodge his salvos. He gets a good one on us there, and you can see that we are losing a lot of health rather quickly. However, we are returning the favor on him. But also something I would like you guys to note is we have drawn him onto our side, right? And here in just a moment, you will actually see a few salvos from our friendly battleships. And it's a lot more difficult for the enemy to hit us than it is for our friendlies to hit him. The keys to being a successful and elite destroyer player are drawing the enemy into engagements that are not favorable for them. As we just mentioned here, this Akatsuki is now beached on fire in front of 3 or 4 ships, and while yes, he probably in a 1v1 could have taken us, we have simply outplayed him here, as our teammates do actually get a few salvos to connect on him. Which is why I always find it laughable when sometimes, people are like, well, 1v1 me, bro, that's a true test of skill. And, in an RNG-based game, it's really not. But anyway, here, we're still winning that potential one-on-one, a tier, and a destroyer a tier lower. By understanding your ship, right, the Japanese destroyers, the Fubuki here, only have 1 gun on the front of your ship, so obviously you shouldn't put it in an offensive, situation. Kiting away, angling your armor, or angling, I guess, you don't really have enough armor to angle, but in playing with your throttle there, we dodged a good portion of his salvos while still connecting a good portion of our own. But throughout that entire engagement, we actually did give up the Charlie cap, but here is a point I like to emphasize so often. We are alive and that destroyer is dead. So now, of course, the Hatsuharu is still close to that cap and we do need to spot him or protect him from, just getting the torpedoes on our battleships here. But let's say that the Akatsuki was the only ship at sea. I am now free to go back into sea and capture sea at will. I see far too many destroyer players rushing into the cap early, which I do appreciate. Getting the cap is your job as we spot this Hatsuharu here. However, sacrificing your ship for getting the cap is definitely not worth it. And here is just a good example of why Perceptive is a good trait to have. We were essentially unaware of where that Hatsuharu was. Now, we had a general guess. However, he did surprise us, and we were fortunate enough to get our turn off. However, if he matches our concealment, he may end up winning this engagement. The good thing is our teammates did throw a few salvos onto him, and once again we see another Japanese destroyer trying to aggressively push into getting another destroyer eliminated with only 1 gun on the front. Now he does turn broadside, but we have now angled our ship, so he's only going to connect a few of those shells. And with some focus fire from our teammates, we have now dispatched 2 enemy destroyers with only 12,900 health. So again, just simply understanding and knowing how to play those destroyers is only going to benefit you for the long term. And I actually, again, have to give a lot of credit to our teammates here. He actually got kind of the blind fire elimination there. Now, there really wasn't much else to shoot at, but as a battleship, if you don't shoot at destroyers, you have no right to complain about when torpedoes thud into your side, okay? If you're not going to shoot at destroyers, you're going to allow them to roam free in the backfield, and that is when most battleship mains go on Facebook and type in angry rants about how they are inadequate in most areas of life, not only in Legends. No, I'm just kidding. But again, you just have to... You have to be a team player, right? I just saw a comment, I think, on something, and it's like, well, you shouldn't expect team play in standard, and I get that, right? People just want to go home and, I don't know, forget about their lives, and I get that, but if you're not going to play in some form of team fashion, why are you even playing, right? I get that, we're not going to be the 85 Bears or, the 06 Patriots or 08 Patriots. I forget whichever one went undefeated except for that loss to the Giants there. But it is a team-based objective game. If you don't, if you just want to rush in, AI is available, man. The AI rush in, and it's certainly fun rushing in and, trying to outplay the AI in a quick match. But in standard, this is a more methodical, thought-out process. But alas, anyway, we've got some great footage, great points, and a little feature here of the Fubuki for Japanese Week. A good message to my IJN Destroyer players. Get the cap, spot for your team, but don't be overly aggressive. Again, we are just now working our way into the C cap. And I know a lot of people are actually looking at this game and thinking, Aaron, this is a bad game. This is a poor game. Well, I want you guys to pay attention to the final scoreboard. As one of our ships actually gets a high caliber, you can see that other ships have certainly gotten caps. But again, I want you to pay attention to the scoreboard. We have damaged 2 destroyers. We've gotten a torpedo on a battleship. I would say we defended the cap, but the game didn't really get us ribbons for it, and we actually do manage to get another torpedo on target here. I know, a personal best for me here in a destroyer. A lot of people think that, damage or getting torpedoes on target is the most influential, but if you zone torpedoes, and I've I have a few clips and videos of zoning torpedoes, but if you put torpedoes in channels and push ships away, you may not be getting those torpedo hits, as we almost take one ourselves. I believe that was from the Surrey there, which is just a good, honestly, a good rack of torpedoes from him, and I should have been paying attention for them, but we make the course adjustment and manage to miss those. I think he was actually trying to torpedo the battleships or even the Budiani, which is just another good point. When you're at a destroyer, pay attention to what is behind you, right? I've taken torpedoes 2, 3, 4 times from sailing in front of my battleships, taking torpedoes that were meant for them. So just a good little piece of advice. Pay attention to torpedo lanes and, of course, battleships and ships behind you. But there it is, guys, 9.5 minutes in the game, and we finally have our first solo cap. Again, just a great point and emphasis on not sacrificing your ships. We were essentially on the weak side there, and I do have to give a lot of credit to my teammates. They, made the appropriate target selection, but we got into that cap. We saw it was heavily contested. We retreated. We drew the enemy out. And now we are able to reap the rewards of our efforts here. Now, I wish that this Nagato would have not ran behind that island. I have no idea what he was doing because we could have gotten more torpedoes on target. However, we make a nice spread against this Helena there, which brings me to another point. When you have 2, 3, 4 racks of torpedoes, almost never is it a good idea to stack them. Now, if the ship is AFK or it's a battleship main who's going to sail on a straight line, but here's a perfect example of that. The one rack that we kind of put off to the side there is the rack or the spread that gets that Helena because he turned in. The white line is a great way to judge where a ship is going. However, by the time that those torpedoes get there, any decent player who knows there's a destroyer in the area is going to make a course adjustment. So something for you guys simply to pay attention to. I want to make a final little point here. At this point in the game, in-game, I was deciding whether or not to chase this Nagato, get a few easy torpedoes on target, make this video a little more exciting for the YouTubes, or do I be the team player, head back towards the Bravo cap, which you can see is now being contested from the remaining enemy destroyer, and give our team more opportunity to win? Well, I decided for the latter there, as it is 110% your responsibility as a destroyer to help your team against other destroyers. Now, the Mahan essentially makes a pretty grave mistake, and our team does a good job of focusing him, and he gets quickly eliminated, which, again, it's always a good idea to shoot those destroyers, because in this particular situation, our team did. That Mahan had low health, and he was easily able to be eliminated from them. Far too often you will see Japanese, especially destroyer players, go out of their way to avoid any sort of responsibility and simply get torpedoes on target. It just happened to us on stream the other day. Our Shima spawned at like A, went all the way over to C on the flank, and he actually did manage a Kraken with a nice XP total. But when you do that, you leave your team out to dry, and we lost the game horrifically. And I guess it bugs me the most that in his mind, he probably thinks that the rest of the team is at fault and he's the better player, when in reality it's essentially his fault that we lost. So again, you have to fulfill certain responsibilities for your team. Now, I know it's a video game and people are like, well, I'll go play how I want to play, but it's a team-based objective game, which is why it's so funny when I see people saying like, you have to play solo and you have to play this way and blah blah blah. It's like, no, it's a team game. Now, I think divisioning up at tier 5 in a carrier with California all the time may be a little tacky, but alas, play the game how you want to play and don't be upset how others, want you to play it. I do think it is respectable and sportsmanlike to play in a team-oriented fashion, but anyway, that is for a different video. Here, we're just kind of wasting time as this Nagato decided that he wanted to live instead of helping his team in any sort of objective fashion. Here we are, though, at the final scoreboard, a 29-22 XP, only 2 kills, not a lot of damage, but we did our job, which is honestly, truthfully, the reason I wanted to post this video. 5 spots there, 6 maybe, a solo cap, damage and elimination on a destroyer. Guys, I promise you, you will have a much better experience if you play consistently like this. You will end up getting those higher damage games when you just simply help your team and put your ship in the right spot. I know that those high damage games, sometimes you got to go around the flank and get the torpedoes, and it does work out for you. However, in that situation, you end up usually leaving your team out to dry. But that was a essentially free-to-play tech tree tier 5 ship for Japanese theme week. I once again go over the commander here. But I hope you guys enjoyed that one. It was a lot of fun to kind of play and do and make this video for you guys. I'm going to mix it up. I do have an Aoba video. I know a lot of you voted Yoshino, Atago, different ships. We do have a disgusting Shima replay from a different community member here upcoming for our Friday feature, so stay tuned for that. I had a lot of fun actually watching that one. Because he kind of follows the principles that I do in this game, and he's just a good guy. But anyway, stay tuned for that throughout the week. I love you guys. Have a great week. Have a great Wednesday, I believe it will be. Yeah, A run out. Peace.